step number 2 says with right sides together, pin center seam, matching inner leg seams and notches. Stitch. To reinforce seam, stitch again over first stitching. So what we are going to do is take that seam that we did in step number 1, and we're going to open up our seams so then it's laying flat. This is the seam that we just sewed. So we are going to attach the 2 pieces that we did, matching up our center seam first, then our notches. Here on this side we have a double notch, on this side we have a single notch. So one is going to match up with side 1, side 2 is going to match up with side 2. If you need to know which one is which, 1 has the single notch, 2 has the double notch. Here I have the seam that I just sewed and serged, and I'm going to open up this layer so that I can see the right side of it. Then I'm going to take my other layer, open it up, and just match up so we have mirror images of each other. So I'm matching up my inseam. I want these seams to be right next to each other. They almost look like they intersect, that it's just one line. Start by pinning that together, and then work your way out to the notches and eventually match up the top corner on each side. Then you're going to sew a 5/8 inch seam around that inside curve. Now that I have it pinned, when I go to sew it, it's not that hard to sew a curve, especially with a stretchy fabric. What you're going to do is just pull it so that it is in a straight line. When you get to the point that you have your center seam here, what we're going to do is we're going to flip one seam allowance so it's laying towards the top, and one so it's laying towards the bottom. That's going to help reduce a lot of the bulk. So if I had it this way, where both are facing the same way, that's 2, 4, 6 layers of fabric. That's really quite a bit. So if we just spread it to the other side, and it really doesn't matter if you go one way or the other, as long as one is facing one way and the other is opposite. And then you can just keep that straight line as you're sewing the rest of it at 5/8. Make sure to check the back side that both sides are lined up evenly with each other, that you're not going to be off. Now that I have this sewn, this is basically my crotch seam. Now, if there is ever going to be a seam that can't hold itself, that's going to rip or break, it's your crotch seam. So your instructions tell you to stitch that same stitching line again just to reinforce it. So that's what we're going to do. Go right over it again. Same as before, back stitching at the beginning and the end, and this time you just have a line that you're going to trace over. Now that I've reinforced my seam and gone over it a second time, I need to seam finish the seam that I just sewed. And I'll be careful when I get to the center part where we have all these seam allowances. Just again, make sure that it lays flat as you're putting it through the serger, and we're going to serge all the way around this curve edge.